Lights, camera.
All right, there we are. Hey, everybody, it's Katie Harris, owner and CEO of Nursepreneurs, and I am here with an amazing panel of physicians and nurses, and we're really excited to bring this to you today. We're talking about medical directors for your business, and we have Doctors for Providers with us, who has been our amazing, amazing partner helping out with our nurses and making this your business a reality. So we have Dr. Lev Grinman and Dr. Dan Cousin. You guys want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Welcome to our channel. Welcome to our asylum.
Welcome to our great world. And then we have Dr. Laura Purdy from Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. And she is a medical director. You want to tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So my name's Laura Purdy. I'm a family medicine physician by trade. I just finished 14 years in the Army, actually. And so every position I held in the military was some level of a director type position, which is where I learned how to lead and work with, I would say, teams of people whose specialties are different than mine. And so found that I really love and enjoy that. I'm licensed in 48 states and do a lot of remote work and telemedicine work and directorship work. It's what I love to do. I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. And then we have Kimball Bradley, who runs our IV hydration mastermind. You want to say hi, Kimball?
Hi, everyone. Hi. How's everyone doing?
Yeah, and she also runs the Drip Chattanooga. So if you guys have questions, please put them into the chat box. If you're not logged into Facebook, you'll just come up as Facebook user. So I apologize if I don't call you out by name, but I will put all the questions in. I'll pose the questions, whatever you have. But one of the things that we wanted to do was talk to Dr. Purdy about being a medical director and sort of setting expectations. What is kind of the role of medical director, and what do you look for when you're partnering with somebody who's running a business? If that's not a big enough question for you, I can definitely.
So the question was, what are you looking for in
as a
someone
medical
to
director?
partner
Why don't we
with?
start with, as a medical director, what is kind of your role and scope of that you do in the business? We get that question quite a lot.
That's a great question. And so the way that I answer that question is I can do whatever they need me to do. A medical director is a very broad term. And depending on the level of experience, the level of expertise, the number of staff, how old, how new the facility or the establishment may be, the role that they need the medical director to fill can be huge or it can be very small. For example, sometimes these businesses have been around for a long time and they've already generated their own standing order sets and they know what pharmacy they're going to use and they essentially have everything done. And all they need is a physician to take a look at everything, say, this looks great to me, or maybe add, I might suggest a couple of tweaks here, and then set up some sort of oversight protocol, depending on the state law, because every state is going to be different in what they require and also how they define directorship or how they define supervision or define collaboration, whatever term is being used in that individual state. It's defined differently everywhere, which can be challenging. And then other facilities, they may need help, even vetting CVs of people to work there or writing the standing orders or deciding what conditions they're going to be treating, which is really fun to do. Deciding how they're going to go about conducting their business. They may even need help with things like marketing or strategy or competing in the market. And I feel like an experienced medical director, especially if you can find someone who has a business background, which I do. I have an MBA. I own a couple of businesses and have actually done a lot of business. They can be a huge asset to so much more than just a name on a piece of paper to check that box. They can really be an asset and a partner in the business as a whole.
Yeah. And before I respond to that, I want to say hi to Chrissy. Chrissy Scavo is one of our nurses who runs a med spa. She does med spa mastermind. So we're really excited to have her on board. And both Kimball and Chrissy, their students, they all need medical directors. So this is all apropos. You want to say hi, Chrissy?
Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet you. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I definitely agree that that the medical director role is really vital to that partnership, and it's really great to have somebody that knows, because in medicine and in nursing we don't get any business training whatsoever, and it's in a lot of ways for the physician a big hang up, because a lot of you guys go out and start your own practices, and this is fairly more new to us to go out and start a business or a practice. So really important. And somebody's got a kid in the background, so if we could just mute that.
Oh, I'm sure it's probably me. I should mute myself.
There we go. But yeah, so guys, if you guys have questions, please put them in the comment sections. So Kimball, let me ask you, what are some of the things that your students ask, or what are some questions that are important to, let's say, for IV hydration in particular?
Yeah, so as far as with medical directors, a lot of my students want to know what to ask them up front, like before they actually get a medical director. What are some of the questions that they should ask them before taking them on as a partner, in their business? So I get a lot of that. How do I prepare to talk to the medical director? Did you guys hear all that?
Yes, we heard that.
Yeah.
And any one of you guys can feel free to jump in and answer.
Sure. I mean, I can try to answer that, and I think Laura can probably, and Dan can probably answer that as well from their perspective. Certainly, you don't have to be 100% prepared. I think it's just a matter of getting a feel for the other person the first time you talk to them. I find that a lot of times providers will, or before interviewing a medical director, they'll come up with a certain set of questions, and then after you talk, you realize that you have like 20 more, and it's okay. You can come back and ask any more questions. All of our directors are happy to answer questions at any time afterwards. I think the things that you want to discuss is basically just be ready to have a good description of what your practice is about. What are you doing? What are your needs? How often do you want to speak to your medical director? Do you need them to review charts for you? Are you going to need any other sort of guidance? I think those are the basic things that you're ready to discuss. You should be ready to discuss the first time you talk. And, obviously the medical director should always be licensed in the same state that you're in. It doesn't hurt to ask them if they have experience with the same type of practice that you're running, just to gauge their comfort level. So I think those are the basic kind of things, and then other things can always be answered afterwards.
Right.
Yeah, I think not to make a silly analogy, but being in the physician-provider matchmaking business, it's a lot like how do you prepare to talk to your doctor? It's like how do you prepare for a date? You kind of what do you talk about? Do you like long walks on the beach? Do you like your eggs scrambled or sunny side up? Are you a side sleeper? Like, I don't know. Do you snore? I
might be a little forward.
Yeah, the idea is just you got to just be open to the collaboration, and you're gonna might just be one little thing that you have initially like question, and other questions will come up along the way, and because you're going to be working together to troubleshoot patient issue here and there. Yeah, I think that's sort of just having the right attitude is the best way to prepare.
And just know that medical directors, we're people, and we're usually not intimidating. If we're ready to work with you guys, like we're usually open-minded, and we're on the same level as you are. We don't look at it as like we're going to be eating somebody for dinner. I mean, it should be a friendly interaction.
What's your favorite color? Blue? Mine too. Whoa.
I do like that analogy. But that's like how it is in business in general, right? Like and even just kind of that sales, when you go out and you want to pitch a sale or something, it's not like come buy my stuff. It's like let's get to know each other a little bit. And
it shouldn't feel like a power relationship.
Right.
It shouldn't be my medical director is sort of, I have to look up to them. It should be an even relationship, and you should approach it as such.
Right. So Dr. Purdy, is there Is there anything like are there like red flags that you ever see when you start a conversation like this that you're just kind of like, this isn't, really going to work out?
That's a great question. I have never run into a red flag, first of all. In my experience, everyone that I have ever talked to that has the drive and the motivation and the qualifications and
Are you guys hearing that in the back? Is it just me?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a funny echo.
It's a little buzz.
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
maybe AirPods, just a second.
It's actually very cool. I wish my voice sounded like that all the time. That's awesome.
A little bit of
People
Darth
really
Vader.
respect everything I say. Yeah, like Darth Vader.
Let's try that. Is that one better?
Much better, Laura.
Sometimes that happens right before the AirPods die. What I was going to say is that I've actually never had this type of conversation where a red flag has popped up that has made me say, oh, I don't think this will work. Part of it, I think, is because the matchmakers are incredibly good and they do a good job of making matches. But secondarily, I think that there are a lot of commonalities between people and among people who have the drive and the motivation and the desire to start their own business. Usually they're going to be self-driven, motivated, empathetic, compassionate, caring people who are generally easy to get along with because we all have very similar common goals. I think what I would be looking for, even though I have never seen that before, would be the same types of things that I would be looking for if I'm interviewing anybody to do anything, whether that is someone to watch my children or someone to do repairs on my house. I'm looking for someone who's easy to talk to, someone who's approachable, someone who is comfortable with communication. I look for common ground. So especially in healthcare, that's really easy to find. I'll kind of fish around in the conversation to see what type of similar experiences might we have had and see if we have anything that we can connect on. Usually there is, whether it's ICU or floor nursing or home health or SNF experience, or I used to be in the military. So one time there was a common ground where somebody had been in the military. And I feel like finding a common ground that you can connect with really helps to solidify the relationship and keep those red flags out. I would definitely be looking for people who maybe don't seem to be as motivated. I wouldn't really be interested in a partnership where it was communicated to me that maybe they didn't know what they were going to do and expected me to create and run the business for them, which would be impossible because I'm almost always working remote. So I need for the people that I am going to enter into a directorship relationship with to really be taking charge of their business and really be self-motivated and really be willing to do the work that it takes to establish and run a business, because my ability to do that remotely, I can't do it for them. They've got to be willing to do that. But I haven't run into that yet in practice.
Which is good. And there is a little bit of feedback coming back again on that. But yeah, no, I think that's really important. And it's funny because I used to tell my nurse practitioner students that they would say when they're graduating, which specialty should I work in? And I'm like, I would find the specialty that you're most comfortable in. Like, what difference does it make what specialty it is? You're not doing the surgery. Like, just pick the group that is the most fun to work with, because you're going to spend like 80% of your life with them. Chrissy, from the med spa standpoint, what are your students looking for in terms of like medical directors, or what kind of questions do they have? And then I have a question from the Facebook group.
I think one of the biggest hurdles in my consulting end, I've had a med spa for quite a few years, and I do a little bit of consulting for med spas and the training courses and whatnot. But one of the biggest hurdles I find through that consulting is getting a medical director. Another big hurdle is those state laws and what state requires what kind of oversight. So obviously having a good versed attorney that, a med spa attorney that's familiar with those is really important. So that's always been a big hurdle. So this service is going to help streamline everything that we're offering, which is the courses, how to set up your business structure, how to run the business. And now it kind of completes it full circle. And yes, we have the medical director for you as well if you need it, which is really nice. Something on a personal level, when I first started my med spa and I had my medical director, is I felt like I was always bothering her. I didn't want to bother her too much. And I try to reach out as little as possible, but through time and as that relationship grew, I realized that she was growing with my med spa too, and she appreciated it. And we were both kind of learning and growing that as I added a new service, and she was not as familiar with it. So we all kind of grew together, and I learned that it's not a bother. And, anybody in healthcare knows it's always about a collaboration. It's always about the team and coming together for every patient. So that's how I felt in the beginning. So just a little pearl for people that it is really a collaboration.
Yeah, and that's a common theme in the hospital too, right? Like the patients, a lot of times they come to the nurses because they don't want to bother the physician, and it's funny that kind of carries over in the business too. But you're right, it is a collaborative, and especially when you're in business, you have to see everybody as, there's not this hierarchy. We don't have time for the hierarchy. We need, we need collaboration. So I have somebody that says, do you help your nurses make formulas or offer suggestions? So I'm assuming this is an IV hydration student. And that would be something that would be for Kimball, because the medical director. So, and Laura, I think you just kind of alluded to that in terms of like, is the person ready for business? Do you have to start everything for them? But do you help make formulas or offer suggestions as part of the service, or is that something you expect to already be done?
I feel like that is something we can do together.
There's a lot of feedback. I'm sorry. There's tons and tons of feedback there.
Yeah.
What if I take them off completely?
Yeah.
Can you hear me
Yes.
now?
Perfect.
So I think that is absolutely 100% something that we can do together, especially if you need or want to have a collaborative environment where it's, what do you think about this? Well, we could do that. Or what do you have as far as options are concerned? But I do think there is something to be said for, what you don't want, right? Because you're avoiding the hierarchy, which I like the way that you put that. You don't want it to be like in the hospital or the clinic where the doctor's just writing orders and you're executing. You want to flex your muscles a little bit, and you want to stretch your mind and be creative and come up with what you think based on your experience and what you've done in your career. What kind of people do you want to be helping, and how do you feel like you could help them from the IV hydration type of perspective? And so I always encourage people to take a first stab, give it a shot, even if you're not quite sure how it's going to come out. Just take a shot, because the simple act of making your own formulary is a part of the growing process. And then we can sit down and look at it together and say, okay, this sounds great. Or how about that? Or maybe we could think about doing it this way. Rather than me just saying, here's what I recommend doing, because you want it to be yours. And then it can be ours as we work on it together. But really, it's better, and you'll have more ownership of it if it comes from you.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily fair for everything to be on like one person to do everything. Like, so that nurse, that business owner really needs to step up, take ownership of what they're doing, get some feedback, some collaboration, and just having that communication lines open. I think what you said is ideal. That's perfect. Lev and Dan, I would ask you, like, just going back to kind of the legal questions that pop up that Chrissy was talking about too. What is because I think you guys get a lot of these questions, especially when people come for the medical director. Should people have their legal stuff in place already, especially for states like California where the rules are a little crazy?
So, as far as the legal, I guess it depends. Can you clarify exactly what you mean as far as like the legal stuff? Give me an example of a question.
So I've had students say, in California, the physician has to own 51% of the business. Does Doctors for Providers help with that? It's a little hard to answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously, we always recommend that you check with an attorney if there's any serious legal question that you have a question about. But we do for a fact know that California is one of those states that requires physicians to own 51% of a practice that does IV hydration, because in California, it falls under the definition of practice of medicine. And so what needs to happen is, I think, a professional corporation needs to be open where it's 51% owned by a physician. What we've seen some nurses and do is establish a management company on an MSO agreement with the corporation itself, and that could be helpful in how you manage the financials. We are happy to provide medical directors who are licensed in California, who are familiar with PC ownership in California. Dr. Purdy is one of them, and then you can establish the ground rules of how you want the PC to be run, how the physician is going to be reimbursed. Those things can all be worked out, but we can certainly help in that situation.
Okay, awesome. And then, so for those of you that are watching, we're here with Doctors for Providers, Dr. Cousins, Dr. Gridman, and Dr. Purdy, who's a medical director. Then we have our course directors, Kimball, who does IV hydration, and Chrissy, who is doing our upcoming one, which is Med Spa. We're very excited for that. So if you have questions related to medical directors and running the practice, please put them in the course, the thread right now. We can see them, we can read them, and we can answer whatever questions you have. And I get a ton of questions all the time, so I know you have them. So please put them in the board. And another one that comes up quite frequently, I get phlebotomists and paramedics and hospital administration emailing me saying, can I do this? And so that's, what is your feeling as medical directors working with nurses?
I think you really kind of have to look at the state laws and precedent. And, and again, we're not attorneys, we didn't go to law school. So, but, we could look at articles, and what I've seen is that there is sometimes a gray area. Sometimes it's very clear who can do IV hydration. Sometimes it's not. I know that for a fact nurses can do it. Nurse practitioners, physician assistants, physicians can run a practice like that. It becomes a little bit more complicated if you're a phlebotomist or a paramedic. It's not completely clear. And I recommend that you probably should really talk to an attorney to make sure that there's precedent where the last thing you want to do is to have some sort of board or state organization come after you and say that you're practicing improperly. So unfortunately, I don't think everybody can do it, but I think it's best to just get legal guidance when there's not a lot of precedent in the for doing it with your training.
Yeah, and also just a note on attorneys: when we say contact an attorney, it's not supposed to be an expensive thing. I mean, if an attorney ever says to you, well, I'll need to do some research on that, it's like someone telling me, well, can you read my MRI? And I'll be like, okay, sure. Let me just research how to do that first. And something like, who can do something in the state they are barred in? I mean, it should be they just answer for you. So if they're not giving you a quick answer and, charge 0.00001 hours or something, then run and find a different attorney.
Yeah, and there's very often also with attorneys, you don't always have to have them put something in writing. If you just want a verbal opinion, you can have them do that. They don't necessarily have to write a dissertation. So just keep those things in mind to keep costs down. Also, firms can have partners who are very expensive, and it can have more junior people working there who are just as knowledgeable, maybe even more knowledgeable, who charge a lower rate. So it never hurts. We've always done this. We'll go to an attorney and say, look, we want something in writing, but we want you to put your junior people on it because it's not going to cost us as much per hour. So never be afraid to talk to attorneys from the perspective of, hey, how can we do this in the most efficient way possible?
Yeah, though I do feel like they always say they're going to research it. And I'm like, oh, don't research. And when I first read it, I went out into the cheapo world of LegalZoom. And I remember getting on the phone with an attorney, specifically paying for that. And maybe it was $50 or something cheap like that. And he's like, yeah, you really need to talk to an attorney. And I'm like, but that's what I thought I was doing. So, I do think you need to go to, your state and talk to them just to make sure. And nobody likes that answer when I give it to them, when I say you should talk to an attorney to make sure that you can start this business.
That's what Google is for. You just go down to the next listing.
Yeah, exactly.
In law school, at some point, they must teach you okay, every question you have to make it sound like it's rocket science. Wait, you want me to figure this out? Oh, geez, this is the first time anyone's ever asked this question in the history of let's recreate the wheel here. So, yeah, they shouldn't be doing that to you. They should, be doing right by you.
And the other thing that I think Katie just brought up, if you need to go to the state, you need to ask your nursing board or whatever. That's free. That's information that they should be able to give you for free. So it never hurts to actually ask the board first if you think that they might have the answer.
Right.
I think interestingly, the Board of Nursing, as long as IV nutrition has been around, I think it's still considered fairly new. And even contacting the board a couple of years ago, you'd be surprised how little they even know.
Yeah,
and
that could happen.
Yeah, and you get passed around a little bit because it's still fairly new in the realm, and they don't have all the answers. A lot of it is a little bit of a gray area still.
Yeah, they're still stuck in like 1982 or something. So that has
I think so.
Yeah, going to the board. But so Kimball, you've dealt a lot with this too because of all this different state regulations. And a lot of the nurses will say they've spent hours looking for this information, whether they can start it or not, and it's just not clear at all.
Yeah, I've had lots of experience with that, talking to people, and they get frustrated. You know, nurses, they want guidelines and rules, and we're used to people telling us what we can and can't do, and we follow those rules. But with this business, there are tons of gray areas, and I usually will say, you know, if you've looked everywhere and you tried to find the information and you can't find it, there are probably no guidelines for it yet. And so we find that to be really true with a lot of things in IV hydration. Although there are some states that are starting to make guidelines. They're coming along. Regulations are coming along, but there's still a lot of states without any out there. So.
And we need to collect those and put them on the website because I can't tell you how many times I have to answer this question and I don't know the answer to a lot of them. So, and rightfully so, people don't want to invest in a course if they don't even know if they can start the business. I always tell them to like figure it out first and then come back.
Right.
Christine Ricci says, not a question, just feedback. I'm currently working with these physicians on our new business. They are best in class and doing great. So just some feedback for you guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Then I'm an NP who started her IV business in a state where a collaborator is needed. When speaking to medical directors who are familiar with this type of business industry, they have a set price, regardless if it's an NP or RN. As an NP, I need a 5% monthly chart review for my collaborator. What is normal starting price in regards to cost for this type of relationship? And do you guys differentiate?
So typically what we have going on now, and again, it all depends. Typically not. We don't typically charge more for providers who need chart reviews. Right now, in a state where physician ownership is not required, we do not have any startup fees to introduce you to a medical director. Our typical standard fee is $750 a month. And that's about it. We try to make it as simple as possible.
All right. And Tina says she's setting up a PLLC here in Pennsylvania, and she's very close to New York and New Jersey. She's licensed in all three. But I'm assuming that her medical director would have to be licensed in all three for her to practice in those states as well, right?
Yes, correct. So anytime you do business, any kind of medical business or practice in a state, your physician has to be licensed in that state. Again, they don't have to be present in that state or ever set foot in that state, but they have to be licensed in that state.
So you want Dr. Purdy because she's licensed in 48 states.
So yeah, and that's why we love working with Dr. Purdy. One of the many reasons is that she's licensed in so many states. So that makes it easier for a business. Instead of having to hire 3 medical directors, why not just hire 1?
So is that like an extra charge, an extra fee to have?
We usually provide, so there's usually an extra fee, yes, for extra states, because we look at it as, look, it's more states, it's more liability, it's potentially more work for the collaborating doctor. However, we will work with you, and usually we give a multi-state discount. So it's not going to be, say if the fee is $750, we're not going to multiply it by 3. We'll almost always come up with a volume discount.
Okay. And then I'm in Florida. I own a small non-medical personal care home care company. Do you know if I can run my IV business under the same corporation?
Not sure, to be honest with you. I think it's more of a legal question.
Yeah. So Tina says New York doesn't allow for RNs to own an IV business at all. Do you guys know about that, or?
Yes, I think New York is similar to California, where a physician has to be owner of a PC. And I think in New York, it may even be 100% ownership as opposed to 51% in California. So it's the same model. It would essentially be, most people do it as an MSO, medical management, a management agreement with the PC that the physician owns, and then you work out how the physician is going to be reimbursed. And again, we can help with that. And I think Chrissy actually is out of New York and knows that as well.
Okay, so there you go, Tina. So it's something that you can do. It's just there's going to be an extra workaround to satisfy those requirements. All right. What else do we have, guys? Kimball, any thoughts on what your students want to know? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of students from Ohio, right? Ohio is starting to be one of the states that and then make the Board of Pharmacy are making regulations. And so how do you guys handle it when you have states that say they have to have, the clients have to have a doctor to do an evaluation first? And do you do telehealth with them, like, or something to that effect, if the client has to have some kind of examination or something first, like
right.
The Ohio Board of Pharmacy is requiring?
So it all depends. So I'm actually, to be honest with you, off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with the Ohio requirements for that. But if it requires a physician evaluation in person, obviously, or even by telemedicine, of course, that makes it a lot more challenging. That sounds like a practice where the physician can be intimately involved, and that's not it's not really a collaboration. That's really kind of being part of your practice. Yeah. So that's unfortunate if that's what they're requiring. I mean, we do work with practices, not just IV hydration, where they do require a physician to be present at least a couple of times a week or a couple of times a month. And we've made that happen. It's usually, the price is going to be more expensive to actually get a physician to come over and actually help you out, because that's part of their day. But I guess it's doable. It's just, you just have to be, maybe you condense your days of where you need the doctor into it being once a week. But it's doable, but obviously it is more challenging.
Okay. Yeah. We're still trying to weed through the regulations from it's the Board of Pharmacy that's starting to put some things out there. And I think there are some workarounds to some of this stuff that they're saying, but I know that was one of the things that we were running into.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I would
creative scheduling.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, in those states, so one of the things that I also specialize in is telehealth, right? And in the states that will permit asynchronous telehealth, asynchronous meaning it's not a real-time interaction between the physician and the patient. And with the disclaimer of I am not a lawyer and we have to check with the healthcare regulatory attorneys, there are really only 5 states that take a hard no stance against asynchronous telehealth, which is Delaware, DC, Idaho, New Hampshire, and New Jersey, unfortunately. But I feel like in states like Ohio, where the laws do permit asynchronous telehealth, which means I do not have to talk or video the patient in real time, I do believe that you could work out a system that there could be a encounter where the physician is establishing a relationship and examining the patient through an asynchronous type of relationship. You just have to figure out what that looks like and make sure a lawyer agrees with you.
Well, that could be something very creative there. So if it's asynchronous, it could almost be, back and forth videos, right? Like if they do a selfie video or something and send it to the doc, and the doc says, "Okay, this is fine."
Yeah, that sounds great.
There's no limit to what you could do, honestly.
Interesting.
I like it.
I like it. Yeah, we're brainstorming here. There's another business model here. My wheels are turning.
Yeah, we're gonna start a new thing where the doctor gets checks their email and there's just like a list of like video clips to watch, and then you send your video clips back, asynchronous telehealth.
Yeah, we'll come up with a doc tube instead of YouTube or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So entrepreneurial. This is such a collaboration of like the great minds.
Yeah. So Tina says, do the doctors prefer to sign orders and review patient orders via EMR, or do you care about EMRs, or what kind of process do you have?
I think it all depends on your medical director and what their comfort level is with your practice, and either with standing orders or whether they want to be see things through EMR. What about you, Dr. Purdy? Do you have a preference?
Well, the best way to make sure, because HIPAA still applies, especially in states where they consider it to be the practice of medicine, I would say across the board, you should act like they do consider it the practice of medicine, because I'm a fan of being a little more conservative so that if the law ever changes, you don't have to backpedal and redo everything you've been doing. I have seen some businesses that will use a salon scheduling software as a way to manage their patients, but I've never gotten the answer to, is this HIPAA compliant or not? I know that EMRs are, though, and I know that they can be shared, they can be utilized, they have a lot of functionality. You can record things like vital signs inside of them. And so I feel like an EMR is a HIPAA compliant way. Now, whether you need to store orders and protocols, I mean, if we have a standing order set, I feel like situation dependent, it might be overkill to then import it into the EMR again if we already have a standing order set. But documenting the patient encounter somewhere in a HIPAA compliant interface is definitely what you want to do.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, you never know when the law is going to change, so it's best to work according to what the guidelines are that are out there, and even if they don't necessarily pertain exactly to your business, but just practicing to that level is going to be important, just for when it does change and they forget to tell you it changed, by the way. So let's see. And then it was this Facebook user is following up with the asynchronized. We have her wheels turning as well. Could the medical director create a video? And I'm going to preface this answer with, we're just making this stuff up right now. So could the medical director create a video asking several questions and the client sends one back responding? This could be considered an encounter. And I think that is what we're saying, but we're not lawyers and we have to clarify this in legal terms.
We just play ones on TV.
I have a video software system where you can do 1 minute clips, which is really nice. So that's why my brain is kind of spinning right now, because that might be an option. Because nobody wants to get a 30-minute video of the patient explaining, answering questions, because that would just be a nightmare. And also, kind of following up in that EMR, like EMRs don't have to be expensive. It sounds expensive, and I know because we did an $80 million Epic update, you feel like it's going to be like a deal breaker, but EMRs don't have to be expensive at all.
I have a little feedback on that. I use an EMR called Aesthetic Record, and it is geared towards med spas, but I also do IV drips through that. And it is, I mean, I can't quote it off because I have a lot of RNs on it, but I believe it's $15 or $12 per user. Super affordable, user friendly, but getting on is a little tricky till you get going with it. And to back that up also, I feel like an EMR is so important, especially in our day and age, even talking about IV therapy. If you're going to hire nurses and they're going to be doing home visits, where's the paper chart? It's going to be so difficult for them. Are they going to have to stop at the office and get the patient chart and then go back and drop it off? It's that whole collaboration thing that anybody could sign in and see what happened with that patient. So I'm pro EMR.
Yeah, I think you definitely want it. Tina says, what's that name again?
Aesthetic Record.
Aesthetic Record. So being able to spell that will be the trickiest part.
And their support is great too. They're great with their support end.
Awesome. Yeah, so guys, we're here with Doctors for Providers. Please, Aesthetic Record, Christine. Actually, I'm going to type it into this thing, but I'm going to AESTHE, Aesthetic Record, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Correct.
But we're here with Doctors for Providers, and we're also here with Kimball from IB Hydration and Chrissy from Med Spa, and we're answering questions about medical directors and any questions that you have related to that part of your business that you're in. So please put your comments or questions that you have inside the comment box, and we're happy to answer them. So yeah, I mean, has there been, and are you guys aware of any new and upcoming changes that are coming in the world of IV hydration or med spa, legal, or things that are coming up that would be of interest?
I don't know anything offhand as far as changes in the med spa world. I think it's just very state specific.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely been the hardest part, is just going from state to state to state to try and figure out what you need to know. Because Kimball and I have run into a case where we had an IV hydration nurse contact a lawyer, and it's just like a doctor. You're not going to go to your OB for brain tumor questions, and the same with the lawyer. So that lawyer had taken the nurse through setting up a home care agency for IV hydration, which was a little overkill.
Yeah.
I think Georgia does that, correct? I know Georgia does that with the home care for the IV. I'm not sure of others.
But
Yeah.
I think there's a trend to start giving massage therapy through telehealth.
Sign me up.
Is that April Fool's today? No, okay.
Yeah, do person point right here. No, I'll take my massage in person. So
That's funny.
all right, guys. Well, if there's no more questions, we're coming up on 45 minutes now, and it's been really, really great. I'd love to have like doctors for providers and our course directors come in and just talk to you guys periodically. Whatever questions you have, we're happy to answer them. And if you have follow-up questions, you can certainly put comments in the thread, and we'll get back to you. Just tag us in our groups, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. So if there's nothing else, do you guys have anything to say?
I had one quick thing. I just with this display layout, I always wanted to try this Brady Bunch thing, where you're like, "Hi, Dr. Purdy, how are you?"
I don't know which way to turn.
I know, you got to figure out which way to turn.
Yeah.
Here, Kate, I'm throwing you a ball. Ready? Catch.
It's reversed.
We'll practice it for next time.
All right. Well,
I
we
really
can
appreciate
do
Dr. Purdy being here, by the way, as well. So thank you for
Yes, thanks very much. And if you guys, from our perspective, if anybody's interested in talking more to Dr. Purdy, you can always contact Katie, or you can obviously, the best way is to contact Doctors for Providers directly, and we will we will connect you guys.
Awesome. And then, I just had the nursepreneurs.com/medical-director. When you go there, it explains what Doctors for Providers does from our perspective, and then it links directly to their website to sign up and get in touch with them. And at this point, there is no cost for the matchmaking. So I would totally jump on this if you are in business, you're ready to go. Get in with this, get in with these guys, and use it as your reason to move forward. Like, let's get started and let's do this, because there's a real open opportunity for you guys here.
Yeah.
That's Dr. Purdy, licensed in Ohio.
Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.